Good evening and welcome back to the Evermore YouTube channel. Forgot where I was there for a second. That's a great start, isn't it? It is me, Mark, on my own tonight. Chris is on his hollies. So yeah, just me. I think we're just a shorter show than normal tonight. Just a quick go through my thoughts on the game from the weekend, and then a quick look ahead to the game on Wednesday as well. A few little things that kind of, I think, have got everybody over the last 24 hours or so, is the way that Newcastle played, the way that things went in what wasn't a horrendous performance, but again, decision making went against them, and just a look at the tactical tweaks or things that didn't work, and yeah, we'll and there's a few out of tunes as well. As always, we'll look at things like that at the end of today as well. So, as always, quickly as we start, if you haven't subbed to the channel already, please do so. Please drop a like on the video as well. It really does help the channel grow. We are just a couple away now from 8,800, only 8 away now. So please drop a sub on the channel. It'd be really appreciated. And help us grow even further. Good evening to you all in the comments as well. As with anything, and especially when we do this on our own, having you in the comments is great, because it really helps us be able to help these flow, and the sort of the comments and the questions. I will try and get through as many as I can as well. So yeah, we'll get started. So I think I'll start with chances missed. This was the first sort of headline of tonight, and although there weren't a huge number of chances in the game for Newcastle, there were one or two that, again, poor decision making. We talked about decision making last week and how Newcastle, when they get into those situations, both defensively and offensively as well, they just make those poor choices, those really bad decisions and what to do next. And there were a number of moments that really caught my eye. The biggest one is the obvious one, is that one. It's the Alexander Isak. I'm still no idea what he's actually managed to do at this point, having gone round the keeper, and he has the easiest of passes across to the left to lay it into the centre of the goal for Joe Linton, who's steaming in, and somehow manages to fluff his lines at that point. And I still can't get my head around that one. There's the header as well that he gets on target, but it's a really weak header. There's Miggy's effort in the first half as well. I think there's the option for him to have squared the ball at that point. There's a moment where Harvey Barnes has started to cut in, and instead of sort of laying the ball, he's got an overlap. I think it's Joe Linton steaming down outside him. Instead, he cuts across, and in the end runs into 2 or 3 Chelsea defenders. And it was just, it was decisions like that every single time going forward that I felt that there's just that there isn't that spark, there isn't that confidence in front of goal, or the confidence to make the decision in the final third that's really helping. And where we saw goals galore last season, and it's an average of 2 a game, and there just doesn't seem to be that cohesion in attack at the moment. There's a lot of the time this season we've seen Isak isolated, and that's something I want to come to in a little bit when we talk about formation. And I just think that the way that the setup particularly doesn't always help. We saw some great stuff. The play for the goal, particularly from Livramento from right back to get into the centre of midfield and then on into the attacking third. The brilliant little weighted pass from from Barnes at that point to as Hall is overlapping, I thought was brilliant. That particular moment of the game was brilliant and very well done. But there isn't an awful lot of that, and there's an awful lot of predictable play. The midfield seems very predictable. It's very flat. It doesn't. There's not enough from them. There's a few comments that we've seen over the last sort of 24 hours where I think Tonali's does get a little bit of. He gets a little bit let off at times, I think, and maybe it's because he spent so long out of the side because of the ban. I don't think he's being utilised correctly. If you look at his last couple of games, he hasn't reached 20 attempted passes in either of those games. He's being brought off after 70 minutes. I guess there was an awful lot of talk of boos when that substitute happens, and I get fans' frustration with that because you want to see the best players on the field. You want to see them taking their opportunities, and I'm not entirely sure we've seen Tonali take his opportunity at the moment. He's certainly not putting in performances that would suggest that he's a will be at the moment, but he's working his way back. But he's had an awful lot of time training with the players. It wasn't like he was out of the training group over the last 12 months as well. So there are things there that I think need to be looked at, particularly in terms of the way that he's utilised. And I think Roger just put in there about sort of plan A and plan and half. This unwillingness to adapt, this unwillingness to change the style, let's change the approach is something that is really frustrating about watching an Eddie Howe side, where we know if you go back long enough that he played in a different way when he was at Bournemouth. They did use three at the back, or they played four across the midfield with two central midfielders, and I do sort of almost long for the return of playing sort of two whole midfielders, and we've talked about that a number of times of dropping into and playing a different way in that midfield and utilising those midfielders better. And I'll come to that in a second. But those chances I talking about, I mean, the Isaac one particularly, I think I said to Chris that that's criminal. At that point, you have to have your head up, looking for what's there. He's got an open pass, and you know that the game ends differently. The other side of the chances that I wanted to cover was that stat, and I just think it's extraordinarily telling from a Newcastle perspective, and I think that there is another stat. It's something in the region of about. I'm trying to remember the stat now because I was watching the guides on Toon Review earlier, and I think Alex said something. It must be bordering on about 80 set pieces now without a goal, or something in that region. And both myself and Chris have said for an awful long time that having a set piece coach, a specialist in that area, we've obviously seen that the fact that Mad Dog is responsible for this, but he's not working, and they're so predictable, the set pieces. It's the same almost time and time again. There's no thanks, Bas. 74 it is. There's no real plan in that, and I think that comes down to the fact that we've said that there is no specialist in that area. And if you look at those, I'll bring those stats back up again, because those bottom four, those are the worst ones in the Premier League this season. So Newcastle don't have a designated set piece. They don't have a specialist in that area. Neither do Fulham, Southampton, or West Ham. And there are a few others. And I wouldn't be surprised if the ones outside are the ones that don't have set piece coaches either. A lot is made about Arsenal's Nicolas Jova, who quite rightly gets plaudits for the way that they've approached set pieces and taken advantage of them. Whether you agree or not with some of their tactics at set pieces, it works. Austin McPhee at Villa, again, some of the creative stuff that they come up with their set pieces, and they're always keeping sides on their toes, and they're high up in in the list of teams that take advantage of those set pieces as well. So it's that. I think that's an area that has to be looked at. I think too much is being asked of a non-specialist in that area to get enough out of it. And there are opportunities there for Newcastle to be much better in that area. Look at the size of the team. I think Chris mentioned that on Twitter. Look at the size of some of the players in that Newcastle squad. They should be doing much better at set pieces. There's enough creativity around to be able to do better. And if they're given the right coach and if they're given the right direction and the right plans, then I'm absolutely sure they can execute. There's just not that there. And the other opportunity, the other chance that I will bring up is the question of was this a red card? Obviously, it wasn't a penalty. It was clearly a foul outside the box, but surely Bruno's getting to that ball. It was given as it wasn't even given as a free kick for a start. I mean, that's unbelievable that hasn't been seen by the referee. And the fact that they've sort of looked at that and said, well, there's enough players on the cover, but Bruno's at full tilt when he's taken out. Bruno's getting to that ball. I'm really sorry. That's a last man foul. It prevents a goal scoring opportunity. It should be a red card. My opinion, obviously. But to not even have been given a free kick was unbelievable. So, yeah, it's the chances missed in that. And it wasn't, like I say, it wasn't a horrendous performance. It was relatively equal in terms of possession and things, but Chelsea had obviously more shots. They had more shots on target. I think they looked much more dangerous in attack, and I'll come to some of those issues in a second in terms of the way that Newcastle set up. But I do think that and I'll sound like Eddie Howe in a second. I think there are positives. There are definite positives to have taken from that game, but it's another defeat. There's one win in 6 now, I think it is. It's just not. It's not good enough. There are factors to account for, but the one thing that I will come to is that is there a sign that things will change? And I'm not entirely convinced that there is. Certainly not in the short term. I think maybe there's a transfer window away for changes at that point, but something has to give. And there's some tough games coming up on the horizon with obviously with Chelsea midweek, Arsenal coming up, Forest, West Ham. They're not all going to be, they're not easy games. They are going to be difficult. And I think the clock is definitely ticking on Eddie Howe's time. And if things don't change quickly, then I think he could be in serious bother. I'm just going to have a quick look through some of these comments. Hyperbole, thank you very much. You've been a member for 9 months now. Right, every free kick goes to Burns. Burn teams know this. And it's the same ball every time, isn't it? And Burn is shocking at reading the flight of the ball too, and that does not help at all. And there has to be something different. Look at the players that score some of the goals. I mean, Declan Rice was balling for yesterday. I mean, just look at the delivery for Mikel Moreno's header yesterday. That and the balling was terrific. And it's been a long time, I think, since we've seen anybody actually put a cross like that and a ball like that in from a set piece. The set pieces and the crosses from Lewis Hall particularly look effective from one point, but right-footed wise, I'm not entirely sure we're seeing anything spectacular at the moment. We haven't seen anything from Trippier when he's played. I think giving the ball probably to Gnarly is probably the best option because we've seen the fact that for the Italian side that he takes set pieces. He's done it for Milan. He did it for the Italian under-21s as well. So there's ability there as well. So something to look at there. Hyperbole, again, gifted 10 memberships. Thank you very much, mate. That is, wow, unbelievably generous of you again. Thank you very much, mate. That's really awesome. So well done to everybody who's got one of those. Thank you very much again, mate. I'm just going to quickly scroll through and just see if I can see any of the comments. Liam can see how getting sacked by Christmas. Yeah, I think talking about that, I think it's the pressure's going to come. It's inevitable. If performances and results keep going the way that they've gone, I think it is inevitable that this will build the pressure on them, and the owners will look to move on. And as somebody put in, I read on X earlier on, not a great barometer, right? I understand, but they're not going to sit and wait and give him an awful lot of time just to wait and for this to change. And he has to do things to warrant being, given the extra time to turn things around. And I think the early side of the season where performances were off but results were coming, we're now seeing results not going the way that they should be. So yeah, I think definitely. Well, I'm going to come to some tactical stuff and some of the slides as well. I know on Monday, I know some of you do particularly like some of those as well. Liam, again, yes, Chelsea were there for the taking. I mean, I said to the lads in the group chat, and I said to Chris yesterday, look, there were goals there if Newcastle wanted them. And again, it's just that lack of belief and lack of quality in the final third yesterday that just really let them down. And decisions at the back as well. That was one thing, and I think I'll come to that one now. So I've sort of labeled this as tactical fail. And maybe it's a little bit harsh because actually it wasn't that bad a performance, but there were some of the things that just struck me as crazy right from the very off. And this is 50 seconds into the game. And I talked a couple of weeks ago about Dan Burn not stepping out. And when I talked about him stepping out, I didn't particularly mean into the opposition box to try and defend. And it just drove me crazy just for a lot of the game yesterday, that how high Dan Burn or Fabian Schär were playing. And here Dan Burn gets sucked. I mean, he's almost on the edge of the centre circle in the Chelsea half at this point, and he gets pulled forward to really play man to man. And we know that Dan Burn doesn't have pace, and being asked to defend and play. And I sort of put a post on X as well about, he looks like he's trying to play like Mickey van der Ven, or playing with Mickey van der Ven's pace. Dan Burn doesn't have that pace. He's not able to play that high line and then recover if he has to. It's just not going to work. And this was the obviously progression from that. And what's really struck me was that, look at that gap that Nicholas Jackson has in the middle of the park. If that ball is played through the centre, I mean, it's 1 minute in and it's he's got a 1v1 with Nick Pope, because Fabian Schär is not going to catch him. Obviously Lewis Hall has obviously got his Madueke out on that flank to worry about there, but Dan Burn gets suckered so high, and it's just sort of one pass bypasses the Newcastle midfield, as happened, and we've talked about quite a lot. But it is terrifying at times to watch, and particularly this, to watch that and watch the defenders being pulled out of position, or in this particular case being pulled high. And again, this was a minute later, and again Dan Burn miles into the Chelsea half. He's gone man to man with Nicholas Jackson, who turns him, and he's gone. And he's not going to recover from that. And again, I mean, what on earth, at the amount of space behind him? It's just, whether this was a tactical plan from Eddie Howe, it seems really strange with the pace that Chelsea have, particularly up front. And you've got two 32, nearly 33-year-old centre-backs that aren't blessed with an enormous amount of pace. It was a baffling one, certainly. This is the move that led, I think, to Chelsea's, well, it was to Chelsea's goal, or the goal that was disallowed. And there's a few arrows to pick through this, but again, there's that both Schär and Dan Burn here get pulled forward towards Nicholas Jackson again. And funnily enough, I mean, he makes the option to follow that yellow arrow to make that turn to his right, and to attack down that way and play the ball through to Cole Palmer. If he'd made the other choice and decided to go left, the amount of space on that left-hand side and poor Lewis Hall would have been 2v1 at that point and really, really in trouble. As it happens, Cole Palmer does stray slightly offside. But again, it's a case of those centre-backs being pulled high, that midfield line in front of them being far too far away from the defensive line and nobody in that gap in front of the defenders. Again, another example, just a few minutes later, of that high line Newcastle were playing with, really, really flat there, playing that almost like not a high offside line. And the long ball bypasses them, and you've got a 4v4 situation at this point with bags of pace attacking. And again, I mean, Newcastle didn't concede from this one, but it again showed the direction I think that they were shown to play with. And then this is the goal. And we can talk about the lauding of the pass here, because the pass from Cole Palmer is absolutely sensational. It is brilliant. He knows exactly where he wants to play it. He's looked up. He knows where Neto is on this left hand side, and it's a brilliant. And I can't fault Tino for this. I can't fault the fact that that ball's found him, because it's just a brilliant pass, and Neto's lightning at this. He can. He gets, well, not a pass, but many fullbacks would have been caught out by this. But what gets me is Fabian Schär here in the middle, and he just realistically, Fabian Schär just has to come across and guard Neto and bide his time and let Tino get back into position. And we see Dan Burn at the top here in his starting position. He's got about 5 yards head start on Nicholas Jackson as that turns in. I'll come to Burn in a second, but I'm going to focus on Fabian Schär for this one. And this is, for God knows reason, Fabian Schär decides to go to ground at this point. And it was just a ridiculous decision from him. And if he stays on his feet, if he shepherds Neto along the edge of the box here, he gives himself time. He gives Tino time to try and give him some help. But it was Dan Burn now at this point that I will pick on, because it's only at this point, when Fabian Schär goes to ground, does Dan Burn start sprinting. At this point, he's been jogging. It's only at this point in this process that he starts to speed up. Why he has not been sprinting back from 1-1, he's lost all the ground he had, and then he's given away the same amount of ground to Jackson, and it ends up with the easiest of goals for Nicholas Jackson. And the decision making from those two centre backs is just woeful at that point. Again, we talked, we talked a few weeks ago about this gap between the midfield and the defenders, and again, this high sort of stance from the defence here. You can see the midfield had been bypassed already. Cole Palmer with this lovely little flick around Fabian Schär, and he's gone. He's away. I think he then plays the ball out to the left-hand side to Madueke, and they're able to fashion another shot. But again, it just a defender stepping out and causing huge problems by leaving a massive gap behind them. And then this gap in between the midfield and defenders, where there's nobody blocking passing lanes, there's nobody dropping in to guard against these two in here. And this is an easy pass through the lines to Cole Palmer, who wants to sit in that gap all day. And I saw somebody mention this as the Eddie Howe gap. And I mean, I agree, because we see this almost every week. And I praised them a couple of weeks ago against City for blocking that gap and being able to stop this happening. But it seems to have gone out the window, and there's just there's no, the midfield three is usually too flat. They're too easy to get through. It's far too predictable, and defensively it's just not working. Again, ball through the lines of the midfield into Cole Palmer, Nicholas Jackson in that area. Not Cole Palmer, because he's down here and the thing, but into that gap, and it's always there. And the odd game it's not, but it's so frustrating to see that there isn't the adaptability with the way that Newcastle's set up to combat this. And then back onto decision making again. This is Fabian Schär for Cole Palmer's goal. A minute into the second half, Cole Palmer's through. He's got 10 yards to get to Fabian Schär. Now Fabian Schär's got all the time in the world to try and shepherd Cole Palmer where he wants, and he just runs backwards and backwards and just allows Cole Palmer to get to it. I mean, he's barely got anywhere here. I think he's only moved like one strip of grass to get to the edge of the box, but allows Cole Palmer. He gives him all the space in the world to be able to get his shot off. Why at this point where he's following this arrow, he doesn't make the move further right to block that shot, to give himself the opportunity to stop that happening? And he never makes the attempt to do it. It's an unbelievably poor bit of defending. And Nick Pope as well at this point. I think his positioning is really, really poor. He should be a step to his right. He's got cover in front of him should Cole Palmer actually take the shot on at this point, because I guess Fabian Schär would have been in position to stop that. But he's just allowed to run into the box and get that shot away, and it's just a really piss poor piece of defending. And it was, I think it was, going back to the same thing we said last week, just really, really poor decision making. Again, at both ends of the field, that Isak one particularly in attack, but the difficulty that Newcastle brought on themselves by playing that high line, by asking Dan Burn to play really high up, and he just doesn't have the pace to do it. And I'm sort of lost for words in a little bit that when I went back through and watched some of that, and just how poor some of that play was. And it's maddening, because I do think there is a core of players there that are good enough to be playing much better, and I'm not entirely sure what's going on in terms of plugging that gap. I've talked about that before. I do wonder whether something like this would be a better suit for Newcastle at the moment, and maybe it is because maybe it is a little bit more negative than Eddie Howe wants to do. But having those two, and Bruno and Tonali, because I think they're the only two that can probably do that role and be disciplined enough to play in that sort of double pivot role, if you want to call it that. And Tonali's used to it. He played it at Milan. He played alongside Ismail Benacer and Rade Krunic in that position. He played in a two in that midfield and thrived. I mean, it's the back of Newcastle paying 50 million for him to come in and play in that role. But I think Tonali is wasted where he is. He's not getting on the ball. He's not being allowed to dictate as much as he would like. And we've seen him. He was exceptional playing for I nearly said for France, for Italy against France a few weeks ago. And he played, funnily enough, he played on the left-hand side of more of a three in midfield, but he played on that left role. And I just think that probably suits him a little bit better. It's what he's more used to in that regard. I think he's played an awful lot of time there for Milan, particularly that final year before he moved to Newcastle. And I just do think that's better suited to him. But I think that, and as well as that, somebody like Willock playing in behind, in that maybe he's in a sort of almost a hybrid 8-10 role in that gap that's able to drop into midfield when he has to defensively. He can play just in front of those two, or get in and attack and get in on the late runs into the box. He's got the pace to get forwards and backwards. We've seen moments when Newcastle, particularly in that period when he was on loan, that he will. He can score goals. He can play in that area, that attacking area, and be able to score goals. And that. So I wonder if that would be a better option for now. And maybe he's a little bit more negative by dropping two deeper midfielders, but it surely will stop the rot, and it will stop those teams being able to play through the lines. And that's, again, my thoughts on it. Let us know what you think on that in the chat. I'm going to try and get through some of these as well. Hyperbole again out with the super chat. Thank you very much, mate. For the first time in 30 years, I'll be in the Gallagher on Wednesday. I'm sure the atmosphere will be positive. It's an easy win up the Toon season chin. I mean, there's a great opportunity, I think, on Wednesday, because obviously I would imagine Chelsea will make a host of changes, and Newcastle should play, I guess, a relatively strong side. I mean, it's a huge opportunity for them to progress. A little bit of revenge for the defeat in the cup last season. So I do think that there's an opportunity there. Hopefully the atmosphere is really, really good. I hope it doesn't turn a little bit negative. We've seen that in the past, haven't we? But I hope it doesn't, and the players can go out and put a performance on, because I think it is absolutely needed. Ty, that annoying fucker on Sky keep calling. Yeah, I mean, the Sky do love to double down on their love of players, don't they? And it is sickening at times. And it's, I mean, they do it with everybody. They did it for the Arsenal Liverpool game as well. They absolutely fawning over one or two, particularly Saka, with good reason at times, I guess. But there are other players on the field, and it does make you a little bit sick. And I know Cole Palmer has been absolutely exceptional, but I mean, sometimes it is vomit-inducing, isn't it? Baz in there, but has been playing under instruction. I mean, the way that Newcastle set up, the way that they started, the way they spent an awful lot of that time playing that high, I can only suggest that yes, that was a plan to go with that, and it just seems suicidal to have gone that high, particularly against a quick Chelsea front line. If it is a complete tactical plan for that, and as I put for this, it's a tactical fail. I think it's a huge gamble, and it hasn't paid off. Vincent in the chat here, would you guys drop Pope for Vactimos? I think Pope is, well, he's not shown the Nick Pope that we know and we've seen. I think ever since his injury, he's not been really the same. There were so many comments in the group chat about him punching the ball. I know Toon Review talking about this earlier on as well, and then he comes out and claims that it was a really good catch actually from the corner. He's under some pressure. I do think. I think Vactimos should play in midweek. I think he should play in the cup game. I think he particularly, I think for Greece, he played exceptionally well, and he looks a lot more comfortable with the ball at his feet. I know that's a thing that Pope is hugely criticised for his inability with the ball at his feet. So I do think that's probably one change will come. Will that stem into the league side? I'm not entirely sure. I think Eddie will stick with Nick Pope and in there for league games. Trevor, you can put as many former Chelsea you like, Mark. We all can. We have a manager who will not try anything other than what he knows. Stubborn, unbending, rigid, turgid. He has to go. And look, I've seen an awful lot of that. I've seen an awful lot of calls for how to be moved on. And I sort of get it. I'm still a little bit on the fence. I mean, I love my place on the fence. I know, and I will get some stick for it. And I did last week. We are critical of him. I think he's made mistakes. I think tactically at times he's found wanting, but he has to. And we've given him so many opportunities and said, look, I think he has to learn. He has to learn from these failures. He has to learn from these mistakes. But we're not seeing it. We're not seeing the change, and particularly his in-game management, the substitutions, the way that we know exactly what's going to happen, who's coming on, and it's just a change of personnel. It's never a change in mentality. It's never a change in formation. It's never a change in the way that Newcastle approach. It's so predictable. I think that's the best way to describe it, because the opposition know, and we said this in the chat a second ago about corners, know exactly what's going to happen. They're going to aim the ball for Dan Burn because he's the biggest guy there. Change it up, change things. We said this about Mickey when he plays on that right hand side. Go to the byline once or twice, because then you get the full back guessing where you're going to go. We all know what Mickey's going to do. He's going to cut the ball back on his left foot, and he's either going to try and put the ball in, or he's going to cut back to the fullback, and that happens time and time again. Do something different. That whole definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result, it's not going to happen. And I think there has to be a quick change, a quick learning curve now, and I think Eddie Howe's running out of time. He's not going to have endless amounts of time to be able to turn this around with just blind stubbornness. I think he has to change something quickly. Hyperbole again. Thank you, mate. You've been on fire tonight. I love you. I'm no expert, but Asula's movement and physicality is way better than Isaac. Just saying. Look, it's an interesting one, because I think we've seen, particularly for the Danish under 21s, his movement on and off the ball has been really, really good. And I know Chris has his thoughts on that, and he does think there are better players that were available for similar prices. And if you watch Liam the lap, his performance is exceptional again at the weekend. I mean, he scores one, he hits the post with another. You know, he looks in good form. He's going to be a player. My argument with that is I don't think Newcastle get the deal that they want. They're going to get a really crappy deal off Man City to try and bring him in for relatively nothing, but with a really minimal return fee. I don't think that one would suit Newcastle at all. But I think there were other options to approach, and there were. I mean, surely in those sorts of areas, and if the money was available for one, then you've got to have backups. You've got to be able to look to bring others in. What was going on? And I tell this, what's gone wrong. It all comes back to the summer and the winter, lack of movement in the transfer window, the lack of players moving on, the deadwood that's still in that squad, the championship standard players that are still in that squad, and the lack of anybody coming in has really, really hurt the start of this season. And that's not a total excuse for the way that this has gone. But it is part of the story. But I do think that Eddie has to change things. And as George says here, I think Eddie Howe would rather eat his own feet and stop playing 4-3-3. I think you're right. Sorry, I needed a drink. My throat was getting very dry there. As Lone Wolf says here, Sky have never really liked us, to be fair. No, I don't think they have. And I was a comment from Richard Keys earlier on that was having a pop as well. I'll leave him alone because I can't be bothered with him at all. I think he's a vile human, isn't he? So I'll move on from him quickly. Let's have a look at some of the more comments. Roger, I hope we win on Wednesday. I'm going. Well, enjoy. But if we get batting, see the atmosphere going hostile, and that's it, isn't it? As there has been I think there's been a bit of a change. There's been a change of attitude from a lot of people, and there's an awful lot questioning how long Eddie Howe has left, and rightly or wrongly, and you're allowed your opinion. I will never knock you for having your opinion on that. If you want him to move on, that's fine. You're allowed to have that opinion. You're allowed to acknowledge the job that he's done, and the fact that this might be as far as he can take the club and take those players. He did a great job with some of them, and being able to take them from where they were and improve their performances, the likes of Joe Linton and Almiron, and Jacob Murphy was one of them, and he took them to a level that got Newcastle into the Champions League. They were playing some really nice stuff. That's a limit that those players have. Sean Longstaff's in that as well, and I think they've reached that maximum level that they can that some of those can get to, and half of me even throws Joe Linton into that, because I still do think that as good as he is now, I think he was particularly good yesterday. I thought he did have quite a good game, put himself about an awful lot, a little bit more of the sort of the beast mode that we've seen, getting up and down the field, and the constant running backwards and forwards and getting involved and putting himself in challenges. But he's limited in that area, and sometimes I think that possibly holds Newcastle back, because his technical ability isn't there if you compare him to other midfielders in the league. So there's the question where does that hold back? Does the fact that, and come back to the signings as well. I mean, I know others have mentioned it. Harvey Barnes being brought in, I think is a terrific player, don't get me wrong. But when you've already got, Chris mentioned this last week, I think, and when you've already got Joe Linton, Joe Willock, and Anthony Gordon all playing that left forward role, or can comfortably play that left forward role, what was the purpose of buying Harvey Barnes? It made no sense, and it seems huge, like 40 million wasted, when that 40 million could have been spent elsewhere. So, yeah. Trevor Elmore's attempt to finish in the first half, Jesus wept like Longstaff's second half pass. Oh my God, that pass from Longstaff! I think I put in one of the chat thing, that was one of the worst passes I've ever seen, ever. It was an awful attempt at a pass, and it was 5 yards. There was he managed to. I don't even know what he did. He managed to play it straight to a Chelsea player instead of his own man, and there was absolutely no need. And Almiron's miss, he's got to do better. Even if he pulls that ball back, I think he's actuating on the edge of the box for that one as well. Again, come back to decision making. That these decisions aren't, they're not being done right. It's they're just not. It's just not going for them, and it is really frustrating. It really is. Hyperbole's at another 10 memberships. My goodness, thank you very much. You are absolutely a star tonight. You are the star of the show, I think. So thank you very much. What's there? Baz, I think it's time Eddie tells his sons they'll be changing score. I think as I said before, I think the clock is ticking. I think it is winding down on the time of Eddie at Newcastle, and I'm not altogether convinced that he has an awful lot of time left, particularly if results over the next few weeks don't go well. And there's another transfer, another international break coming up in a couple of weeks, isn't there? So another couple of defeats, and the writing could really be on the wall for him. Marcus, eat that pumpkin behind you. Yeah, I forgot I put that there, to be honest with you. So happy Halloween to everybody for this week. Ronald's, the cries of Saturday Howe are getting louder, but I point out who can manage this group of players better. When you look at the bench, yeah, I mean, it might take a magician, but I think we're seeing that obviously Manchester United have pulled the plug. It was one of the things that I'm going to come to in Out of Toon tonight, that there are options around, and maybe it might not be an option of a free manager. And I think there's always that question back from people that go, well, who's free? Well, everybody. The price is right. Ruben Amorim's at Sporting, isn't he? And is going to cost Manchester United about 10 million to get him out of his contract, but if they're willing to do it, then the right manager is available for the right price. And I think there are plenty around that could come in and do a job. That's up to the owners as to whether they're willing to spend that money and do that if they want to pull the trigger. Baz again, love J7, but for me, peaked. Yeah, I think there's, like I said, I think there's a level, and I think he's probably reached it for him in that position, I think he's done an incredible job. But I do wonder whether we've seen the best of Joe Linton in that particular position, and whether that needs a change. Hyperbole make this channel. I mean, I'm going to get you on in a second. I think that's going to be the way he's put himself into a role in here again. Like, yeah. Please drop a like on the video. That would be really appreciated. So this from Trevor. It's controversial, but it'd be better to sell Gordon in the summer to Liverpool and keep Anderson and Mint. I mean, that there was rumor that was the original plan, wasn't it? That Gordon might have been the one to have been moved on, and I sort of understand that would have made sense. I think it would have been almost criminal to have sold a player like that, particularly on the back of such a good season last season. But it would have kept another couple of players in the squad, an exciting one in Minter, surely. And I think at some point we've all got to kind of move on from that one, because you can't bring that one back, unfortunately. Trevor, Jose, I've seen a lot of calls for it. It's a short-term one, but he might be the man to kick on a gear. He might be the one to do 2 years and then move on and have taken Newcastle back into those European spots and put a bit of style, because sometimes Mourinho's style isn't all there, but some, bit more plan, a little bit more solid, a little bit more savvy when it comes to seeing out games as well, and being able to get one over on some of the more dominant teams in the league, the Liverpools and Manchester Cities, that sort of thing. I think he could definitely come in and do a job. Ian, I thought it was a plastic plywood football. Funnily enough, when we bought it, I walked the dog up to go and get it. I'll go off on one here. And the dog on the way out of when we're coming out of the shop thought it was a football, and she absolutely loves a football and wouldn't let us walk without trying to play with it. So yeah, she definitely thought it was a football as well. Liam, get Jose Mourinho again. I like to say we've seen an awful lot of calls for Jose. Mancini's now available as well. Could this be the sort of the follow from City? Because this is what City did, didn't it? They moved on from Hughes and went to Mancini. Could it be that Newcastle will follow suit in that regard? Bear with me 1 second. Sorry. Marcus, exactly, Mark. We're smart at Evermore. Well, we don't like to be smart. We like to, we like to, we know a couple of things. I'm joking. We don't a lot of the time. But we certainly, we're all full of ideas. We can all look at what's going on. We can all have our own opinion on things. And I say, look, if your opinion doesn't match ours, that's fine. We're allowed to talk about it. We're allowed to debate. That's the best. The best thing about football is the fact that we can all have a different opinion on something that's right in front of us. Liam says Allegri is also free. That is true. I think Chris mentioned that in his video yesterday, that Allegri's available. Terzic as well is another one. I think there were those flight rumors a week ago or so that he was on a flight in London, and he could be one. There you go, Liam again. Jose Mourinho will be a Mark Hughes to Mancini. Yeah, I mean, I can see that. I really can. But it will just be a short-term thing. But look, it might liven things up a little bit for a couple of years. It's certainly not be not be unentertaining, will it? It's not going to be dour around the place. Ty, and saying how many people can't face up to it being time for how to move on. I think there are an awful lot of people getting to that point now. I think that more and more have gone that way. So yeah, it's. I'll say it again. I think the clock is ticking, and I think that the time is starting to run out a little bit, particularly if the next few games don't go well. Trevor, you've done a commendable job tonight with Chris, guys. Thank you very much. No, Chris is enjoying a well-deserved holiday, so he can go and enjoy himself with his family. And look, he does an awful lot. He talks an awful lot on here, and he does a cracking job. So, but thank you very much for that. That's really kind of you. Chris the fucking splitter, harsh, very very harsh, very harsh. Ty, the special one, plays awful football to watch. It can be. I get that, and I get that that's sometimes a huge criticism in him. And I said it myself a couple of weeks ago. I think possibly Jose's time has been and gone. But could he do that job for a couple of years and take Newcastle to a next level? He does win pretty much everywhere he goes except Spurs. He got them to a cup final as well to that point. So could it be that he is the next stepping stone on the ladder? And if you go back to our videos when Eddie came in, I think I said at that point, I thought Eddie might not be the long-term option. He might not be the manager that takes Newcastle into Europe and the Champions League. And he did that, so that's a huge bonus in that regard. But he might not be the one that gets them there and keeps them there. He might not be the one to win him a trophy, but he was certainly the right manager for that point in time, and he did a cracking job. But with everything, it comes to an end. There is no jobs for life, and it has to probably come to an end at some point, however sad you might feel about that. And I think there will be an awful lot of praise for the way that he's handled himself and for the job that he's done. But sometimes I think that I think that that like I said, the time is running out, and he does look like he's struggling a little bit with being able to turn this round. So we'll see. The last couple of things before we go, like I said before, I think I wanted to kind of just give a quick preview of the cup. I kind of wanted to see your thoughts on what you think for Wednesday night. I do think that we'll see a very different Chelsea side. As I said earlier, I think they will make an awful lot of changes. I think Nkunku will probably play in place of Nicholas Jackson. I know he came on. I think you'll see changes out wide. Maybe Zenzo will come into the midfield. There'll be changes at the back and probably a different goalkeeper. So it could be an entirely different 11 that starts the game for Chelsea. Obviously, Newcastle really don't have that option. Excuse me. Newcastle really don't have that option, but there are some changes they could probably make. I do think they should probably make that change in style, that change in formation, being able to do something a little bit different. It's a question as to, I saw somebody suggest that maybe it's the change at centre back, Lloyd Kelly coming into play at left centre back instead of Byrne. I think there's a time and a place for Dan Byrne, and he's done a really good job for an awful lot of this season. He was brilliant against Manchester City, but against a centre forward that isn't lightning quick, but is big and strong. I think that suits him. I just think against the quicker forwards, we saw that left back last season where you get absolutely roasted for a few games against Forest and Luton. He against the quicker strikers, he is going to struggle, particularly against those where he's coming higher. But maybe Lloyd Kelly is a better option to play at left centre back. Not an awful lot of options elsewhere, to be honest. I think if Trippier is not fit, then Livramento will continue. I think Lewis Hall will continue on at left back. Maybe Vakatimos will come in goal. Would Emil Kraft come in at right centre back and give Fabian Schär a break? I think he probably needs one. Midfield wise, potentially Sean Longstaff will come back in. Would we see the return of Lewis Miley into that midfield? That's another possibility there. I mean, striker-wise, there isn't another option really outside of Asula. Will he start Asula? I can't see it against Chelsea, but he might go that way. And out wide, I suppose it will all depend on Anthony Gordon's fitness. If Gordon is fit, I think he should play. If he's not fit, obviously don't risk him at all. You save him for the league game, and probably you're looking at Barnes and Almiron, or Barnes and Murphy again, for those positions. And whether Joe Willock comes in, maybe Joe Willock can play down that left hand side, go back to that tandem of Willock and Joe Linton on that left again. And we saw last week when that did happen, there was a bit of impetus in that regard. So maybe that's the way that will go. Hyperbole. We haven't discussed Isaac's lack of lifting his head. I did mention it earlier. To be fair, I did mention that horrific bit of play, and I mean, if you just want to cry again, I will bring it up again. I mean, that's a difficult look, isn't it? To look at that again and again, and I still can't wrap my head around that one. I don't know how he got himself into the position he ends up in, where he ends up with a corner, and that should be a goal. And it's an awful bit of play, and really unlike him when you look at how he was last season, because he was so good. And it's just, yeah, mind blowing. Baz Targett might play. Well, has anybody seen Matt Targett recently at all? Because I mean, he's just vanished, hasn't he? He was ruled out with eczema a few weeks ago, and rightly or wrongly, we said a couple of things and got some grief, and I feel his pain too. As somebody who has suffered with it, it's not fun. And I know that it can be particularly painful and horrible to deal with. But the length of time that lad had been out, I almost think we'll never see him play for Newcastle again. I think he might be one that absolutely is going to get moved on. Marcus, Newcastle could have had Neto on the cheap. Yeah, I mean, he looked good, and weirdly, isn't it? Because of the sort of talk of you play left-footed from the right-hand side as he did for Wolves, as I think he probably would do if he played for Newcastle. He was exceptional down that left-hand side, wasn't he? It was nice to see a left footer on the left. It's so strange because we don't see it an awful lot, but I thought he was very good. He's lightning quick. He's full of tricks. And on another day, probably it does better in terms of a finish later. I think in the first where he cuts in as well. No problem at all, mate. No problem at all. I think Matt Targett looks like the Elephant Man. He's a little harsh there, George, to be honest with you. Run around there. We're almost returned to Maxi being back with the number of bandages that might be used at that point. I don't recall eczema stopping me from playing football. No, I used to have it on my shins, so wearing shin pads was horrendous. But no, it never stopped me from playing. So it's awful. And Target is on £100,000 a week. Wow. At some point, we're going to see it, and probably one for me to look at as well is that how much Matt Targett has cost per minute that he's played, which I think will be terrifying because he's not played an awful lot of minutes since he signed. It's I mean that deal looks horrendous, doesn't it? £100,000 a week. I mean, you put that alongside Lloyd Kelly getting £150,000 a week. It's just mind blowing when you think that where the finances in football have got to. It's just absolutely crazy. Yeah, exactly. And Kelly cost him more years, and not getting a sniff. £150,000 a week to not get a sniff at playing is just awful. It really is not a good look there at all. So last section, and then I will get myself out of here. So Out of Toon, there are a few things to kind of go through in this one. One of the ones that really sort of made me chuckle in the week was the cost-cutting Manchester United asking Man City to give their players a lift to the Ballon d'Or ceremony and being told no. it did make me create this first thing in the morning, to have Garnacho and Kobe Mainu hitchhiking on the side of the road trying to get to Paris. Just, yeah, I mean, very typical of the way that Man U are operating at the moment, I think. And this one came up yesterday. Now, this was VAR for the Newcastle game. And a lot of people picked up on this. And interesting, I believe that maybe somebody working in the VAR with their FPL open in full view of the TV cameras. Naturally, there's an awful lot of conspiracy theories now going on that things were given and things were not given to sort of to boost people's FBL points for the weekend, which I thought was hilarious. But yeah, just that made me chuckle as well. Probably somebody that's not chuckling here was the Virgil van Dijk on giving it back here to the Arsenal player who's was Havertz, wasn't it? Who's pulling his shirt, and Virgil van Dijk kicked him twice. Was he penalised? No. So apparently you're allowed to now kick players for grappling with you and get away with it and not be given a card. I'm sorry, but 2 kicks. I mean, that's outright kicks into him. Is that not violent conduct? Should that not have been a red card for Virgil van Dijk? I mean, yeah, I think there's precedent there for others, isn't there? It's a strange one. And this is one we touched on a little bit earlier, but Erik ten Hag sacked with immediate effect today after Manchester United's defeat to West Ham yesterday. How they lost that, I have no idea, because I mean the penalty was an odd one anyway, but the number of chances that Man U had was insane. But Ten Hag is gone, so I mean that's a painful one for everybody in the league other than the Manchester United, because we were quite enjoying watching the Erik ten Hag show at Old Trafford. A couple of people that were particularly upset to see him leave was Jadon Sancho with his waving emoji, and David De Gea with his post and loving it. I think is the way to look at that. And equally as well, this was reported earlier that Ruben Amorim is on his way into Manchester United potentially in a 10 million release clause. And this goes back to what we were talking about before. If Newcastle do want to move on from Eddie Howe and they want to bring in a manager of a higher stature, a higher standard, that they have the ability to do it. The right manager is available for the right price. I don't doubt that there will be somebody that they can go and bring in that will come in and do a job. Like I said before, just definitely one that not hold them back. And as Ty's put in there, Rodri with the winning the Ballon d'Or, and speaking of Ballon d'Or, nominated by Jude Bellingham, with a comment from Rafinha, "Where was you tonight after Barcelona's thrashing of Madrid the other night?" That was a spectacular win for Barcelona. They really put Madrid to the sword, and I think the Madrid players have been pulled out from going to the Ballon d'Or ceremony. It seems a little petty. I do think. I mean, I just think that earlier in the week they were talking about Vinicius Junior being the player that was going to win, but obviously Rodri, it looks like has won that. So yeah, I thought an exceptional footballer, hasn't he? And maybe he's deserving of it. That's you might have another opinion there. So Roger, 19-team petition to get Van Dijk back. Yeah, definitely. I think we'll all sign that. Definitely. We'll all go there. Good night, all. How are the lads? We can beat these at St. June Park, get ourselves back together. That's all behind that. Thanks for that, George, and enjoy the rest of your evening, mate. And I think that probably just about covers everything I've got. Though I did have a picture of the Ballon d'Or ceremony. But I haven't pulled it up on the slides for tonight, so apologies for that one. But no, that is us all done. Thank you very much for all your comments and all your support in the chat tonight. It has been appreciated. I'll be honest with you, when I came on, I did have a feeling that I was only going to be on for about half an hour, and I've managed to do an entire hour on my own. So thank you very much for all your support tonight. If you are new to the channel, please drop a sub and help us get to that 9,000 mark. We have got that blue Newcastle McEwen shirt to give away when we get to 9,000 subscribers. If you drop a like on the video as well, that would be really appreciated. Help the channel grow. I will be back on Wednesday post game and to do an instant match reaction to the cup game on Wednesday night. So enjoy the rest of your evening, morning, evening, afternoon, wherever you are in the world, because I know some of you are watching in from all over. So thank you very much for tuning in. Enjoy it. I will see you on Wednesday. Good night, everybody. See you later. And I'm going to try and find a video clip, but I can't find it. 2 seconds. There we go. I'm done. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.